The more connected fans feel to their sports teams, the more likely they are to invest in it, whether it's tickets, gear, or souvenirs. Engage with fans by asking for their input on team decisions by getting a .vote team website. Visit GoDaddy.com today to get started.
Aaron Judge's greatness could give Major League Baseball a do-over. We talk with ESPN Radio's Don LaGreca, and are the Knicks dead even before they play a game against the Celtics? All that more on this edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. All right, we are off and running on another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Welcome in. Jam-packed episode of the podcast today. We got tons to get to, but before we go any further, do me a favor, smash that. Well, don't smash it. It's your phone. I don't want you to break your phone, but just simply press the subscribe button to this podcast. I can't tell you, your support is essential to get something like this to grow and to get off the ground. So if you can like the episode too, that would be awesome. I don't want to make any presumptions before we get too deep into it, but it only takes a second and it does mean a whole lot. Now, today, we're going to talk to our good buddy Don LaGreca from ESPN Radio about his new show, about his old show. I'm going to try to get him to rip Michael Kay so we can get some viral content. We'll see about that. We will talk about the NFL draft. Are the Giants actually back, or is this just another mirage? I will talk hockey with Don. We'll see if he has any answers about what's going on with the Rangers with their new head coach. But most importantly, I think the main thing, we're going to talk some movies, and I will finally try to get Don to admit that The Irishman was actually terrible. But that's for later on. First, we got to get to the headline. And the headline is Aaron Judge is Barry Bonds and baseball should help him cheat. All right, now you probably say, well, what the heck is this idiot talking about? Let's start at the beginning. And the beginning is what Aaron Judge is doing right now is ridiculous. By every metric, by every measure, the numbers he's putting up far and away better than everybody else in Major League Baseball. He is in a different league. Remember when Tom Kelly said about Mariano Rivera, he belongs in another league? That's what Aaron Judge is doing at the plate. He leads baseball in basically every major category. OPS plus, slugging, on base percentage, RBIs, batting average, hits. He leads all of it. And this is not just some hot start to a baseball season. Over his last 162 games, Judge has a slash line of 369, 494, and 774. So that on base percentage of 494, that means over the last baseball season of games, he's getting on base almost 50% of the time. He's also hit 64 home runs in that span. As of May 1st, he had been on base more times in his last 100 games than he had made an out. That does not happen to anyone ever. Now, you might be saying, listening to this, yeah, duh, we don't need your dopey podcast to let us know Aaron Judge is great. My grandmother knows that. Meemaw has been all about Aaron Judge since he first came up. Peepaw too. No, I know, but just stay with me here. The numbers Judge is putting up are the closest thing we have seen since Barry Bonds was basically forced to retire because he could not stop trashing the Major League Baseball record book. And let's be clear about this. Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter anyone will ever see. I don't care what age you are, how long you've been watching baseball, what your favorite team is. Barry Bonds is, no question, the greatest hitter anyone will ever see. Don't give me anyone else. Take your Ken Griffey Jr. someplace else. Willie Mays does not qualify. Babe Ruth does not qualify. Bonds was already in that conversation when he entered into a 4-year period where no one could get him out. From 2001 to 2004, Bonds took it to another level. Even for an all-time great, he became a cartoon character. His 162-game average in that span was a .350 average, 52 home runs, and over 200 walks in a season. To put that in perspective, nobody in baseball history ever walked 200 times in a season, even now. That is, with the exception of Barry Bonds. Bonds averaged 200 walks in a season, 213 to be exact. And you could make the argument he should have walked more. It was the only approach to pitch to him, because if you threw him a strike, he was going to hit it a mile. He slugged over 800 in that span. If you had to narrow it down to a single number, OPS plus in baseball is a very good one. It's one number and it's easy to understand. I don't know how to calculate WAR, do you? Do you know the mathematical equation for RC plus or whatever the heck it is? OPS plus is simple. All players are put into the equation. 100 is league average. If you're below 100, you're below league average. If you're above 100, you got it, you're above average. So if you have an OPS plus of 120, you're 20% better than the average player. 150, 50% better. 90, 10% worse. It's math so simple, even an idiot like me can do it. Bonds' OPS plus in that 4-year span was 256. He was 156% better than the average player. Man, how did he do it? Oh, right, that's how he did it. Yes, of course, the problem with all of that was that Bonds was using performance-enhancing drugs, the Balco scandal, the cream, the clear. He admitted to it in court. He said he didn't know they were performance-enhancing drugs. You'd think he'd know that when he had the ability to rip a tree right out of the ground, but I digress. Bonds was at his greatest at an age when every other player, really in every sport, is declining. And his performance, even at the height of the steroid era, led to the destruction of the baseball record book. That's important because baseball is all about the records. It's the one sport where the numbers matter more than any other. Baseball keeps track of stats better than almost any other sport because the game focuses so much on individual players and long-term performance. Those stats really mean something. It lets us compare players across different eras, tell great stories, and understand the history of teams and athletes in a deeper way. No other sport really can compete. In baseball, stats aren't just numbers, they're part of what makes the game special. So with a tainted Bonds atop all the home run records, it kind of takes that away. You can't compare anyone to Bonds on PEDs because that level is not reachable by mere mortals, and it's not even reachable by all-time greats, even with some help. It ended the conversation until Aaron Judge came along. Who could have ever expected a 6'7", 270-pound behemoth who is putting up numbers that are even within shouting distance of Uber Bonds? And not even shouting, more like whispering. As I said earlier, Judge's slash line over the last 162 games of 369, 494, and 774, that's pretty close to what Bonds did in 2003. 341, 529, 749. That year, Bonds hit 45 home runs. Again, Judge over his last 162 has 64. All right, so that's a whole bunch of numbers, but what does it mean? What it means is Major League Baseball should be doing everything they can to make sure Judge helps cleanse the record book of Bonds' clearly tainted performance. All right, so how did they do that? Well, Rob Manfred has got to work in those juiced baseballs of the 2017 season into the mix. Meet Judge halfway across the sky, as Kenny Loggins might say. Part of what makes Judge's performance so amazing is that baseball pretty much across the board is down offensively. Now, it's still very early this season. It's tough to know if the offense will rise as the temperatures start to heat up, but the numbers have been bad. Offense is struggling now more than ever, which is not hard to understand when relief pitchers, every one of them basically throws 97. But baseball should be out in front of this, even if it has to happen behind the scenes. Baseball has gotten better at adapting to things. New rules. The pitch clock has been a massive improvement. They've tried things. This is one thing they can do behind the scenes and then plead ignorance later if anyone finds out. Chances are with these sports leagues, they're all doing something behind the scenes that's shady. This one, though, would be for the greater good. Baseball has got to work harder than other sports to capture young eyes. By design, baseball is not designed for the modern age. It's not football. It's slow. The drama builds. It was not created for a TikTok generation where attention spans are somewhere between a sneeze and a goldfish blink. Major League Baseball should be doing everything they can to regain the record book from an era of steroids that made us feel good as fans at the time, but kind of ruined a major part of the sport. And if MLB has to put their thumb on the scale to do it, so be it. All right, now we're going to talk to one of the hosts of the Afternoon Drive Show on ESPN Radio here in New York, our good buddy, who is nice enough to give us a few minutes. And that, of course, is the one, the only, Don LaGreca. Don, thanks for joining the podcast today, buddy. How you doing?
My pleasure, my friend. How are you?
I am fantastic. All right. So look, this is a new venture that I'm just getting off the ground. Keep that in mind when you answer this question. I need viral content to really get this thing going here. How is it finally to be free of the shackles of Michael Kay?
You know what? I'm gonna save it all for you, my friend, because I've played the game with everybody else, but I am so alive. I'm so free. It's amazing. Listen, I loved working with Michael, and I owe him so much. I mean, he did not have to do what he did for me. I was the update guy on the Michael Kay show, and he talked to me. He brought me in on different subjects. First it was hockey, then it was the Mets, and then it was the Giants, and the next thing you know, I became a co-host, and that would not happen with everybody. Gordon, you've been in this business long enough. Egos sometimes get in the way, and hey, it's my show. Keep everybody at arm's length. But he allowed all that to happen for me, so I really appreciate it. But 22 years, it was time. I was always very frustrated. My name wasn't on the show, just because you had to listen to the show to know how important I was to it. And to people on the outside, maybe you just didn't realize, well, if his name's not on the show, then why would he be considered a vital part of it? It became kind of crystal clear to me in the 20th anniversary when Chris Russo was the MC of our event. And 3 different times during the show, he said, Don, I had no idea you were this important to the show. Because you know how Russo is. He just can't. Sometimes, saying the right thing is not necessarily his bag. And it's like, yeah, because he his whole life, he did the afternoon drive. He never listened to the Michael K show. He was on it a few times when we taped, and I'm sure he heard rumblings about it. And it made me realize that, yeah, if you didn't listen to the show or only partially listen, maybe you didn't understand how important I was. So that was kind of frustrating. So to be able to have a show in which I'm not just an equal in the show, but also to have my name on the show, it's important. And maybe it's ego, or maybe it's just I want people to know that I'm more than just a sidekick or an update guy or just an ancillary piece to a show. That I'm not just a part of it. That it is something that I do. So to answer your question, very long-winded, it's different, but there is a freeing to it that I'm looking forward to continuing to do.
And of course, the new name of the show is Don, Hahn, and Rosenberg.
Right.
So you've been working with Peter for a few years now. It's probably been about 7 or 8 years. Alan Hahn is now part of the mix. How has that dynamic changed from what it used to be?
Well, Peter was, he joined the show in believe it or not, late 15. So we've been working together for just a few months away from 10 years. But he knew his role. It was me, Michael, and then there was Peter. So I don't want to say like 2.5, but it was like clearly his role. You do ENN, you kind of jump in when things were kind of in his area. But now he's 1/3 of the show. So that was a little bit of an adjustment to make, because I do think sometimes it can get a little hinky with a 3-person show where everybody has an equal voice. So that really makes it kind of make sure everybody gets their say. And then you get the calls in and the guests. So there could be a lot of different moving parts that can make it difficult. So that was a little bit of an adjustment. But I've known Alan. Remember when we first started the station, Gordon, we had the Islanders on our air, and he covered the Islanders for Newsday. So he was always around the Coliseum when I was there, and he'd always come on the show. So I've known him for 20 plus years, and then, Peter for almost a decade. So that's really helped the show get off to the right start.
Have you had to alter how you approach the show? Obviously, you have gained notoriety, have gone viral many times for your rants. Right. Have you had to alter, not your act, but just the way you approach the show now, kind of being more of a driving force as opposed to somebody who's playing off someone else?
Well, that's a good point, because when Michael was doing the show, Michael always drove. Michael kind of dictated the direction the show would go. And you've been in that situation before, Gordon, where it's kind of just easy. Just sit back and let the pitches come to you. And now you're kind of more involved in the direction and driving it. And not that I'd ever had a say on the K show. I certainly had a say. But, if Michael wanted to do something, he was kind of the final word. Now I feel like I've got a little bit more responsibility. And unlike Michael, where he just had to kind of worry about me and then how to bring in Peter, it's all right, I'm driving, but does Alan get his say? And then you got to make sure that Peter gets his say. So I don't want to say it's harder, but there is a little bit more moving parts to it, where before it was just kind of like sit back, and as each pitch came, he just dealt with each pitch. Now I'm kind of responsible for, pitching and where the ball is going to get hit. So there's a little bit more to it, which makes it more challenging and a lot more fun. But that's probably the biggest adjustment I had to make.
Don, let's get into the sports of it now. There's a lot going on, especially with the Yankees and the Mets, of course, and everything with the Knicks playoff run. But the draft still seems like that topic that everybody is talking about. What was your take on Shedeur Sanders and the drop that really we've never kind of seen a player that was thought to be going high in the first round, last until the 5th round? What's your take?
I was just flabbergasted. I can't think of anything. We think of Brady Quinn. We think of Aaron Rodgers. We think of Thurman Thomas, guys that dropped to maybe late in the first round, not to the 5th round. I mean, it was crazy. every conversation we had with any draft experts, and I put experts in quotes because nobody really knows what general managers are going to do, but it was just, he might drop out of the top 5. He might drop to New Orleans. He might drop down later in the first round. I thought there was a possibility if the Giants traded back into the first round, it would be for him at 24. And for the 5th round, it's just crazy. I think it was a perfect storm of everyone overrated him because of who his dad was. And then I think who his dad was and his attitude really put him in a tough spot. If you believe the reports, and I've got no reason not to believe them, of how arrogant he was and he didn't seem like he wanted to do the work, that's going to scare off a lot of general managers, especially for that position. Quarterback has just become so vital. I don't think there's a position in sports, Gordon, that's more important than the quarterback of an NFL football team.
Yeah, because you're the face of the franchise as well. It's not just, can you play the position? We want somebody who's all in on the job and the responsibility.
Right. Well, not only that, Gordon, it's really blanking hard. It's a hard thing to do. I think the jump from college to the NFL is as wide a gap as in any sport, minor league baseball to Major League Baseball, college or junior hockey to hockey, college to basketball in the NBA. It's not as wide as college football to the NFL. You've seen so many Heisman Trophy winners not even make NFL teams. I mean, you could be the best college football player and not make it in the NFL. So it's a hard job to do. And if you're not all in, there's no way to be successful. I'm convinced that from a talent standpoint, there's not much of a difference between any of these quarterbacks that get drafted in the NFL. It's all about who drafts you, and it's all about how much you're willing to do all of the extra work, and do you have the head to be able to do it? And it probably scared a lot of people off, not to mention that if I've got Shedeur Sanders and there's an issue and he's not playing, one of the biggest personalities in the sport has got the vehicle in Colorado to complain about it, to say something about it, to cause a controversy. Gordon, it's never one thing. All of these things mixed together just made for just a bad sauce for people to not want to have to deal with him. I still think it's incredible that he dropped to the 5th round. And did you see the reaction from the Browns when they drafted him? It was like, oh, God, why are we doing this? I mean,
that clearly to me seemed like the Browns management knew that somebody, maybe the owner, was going to put the thumb on the scale and tell them to do it. I think that's the only reason why they took the quarterback in the 3rd round. I don't really think they wanted that quarterback in the 3rd round either. So when you're talking about dysfunctional NFL organizations, the Browns would be maybe the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
And that seemed like a real-time example of how just dysfunctional they are as an organization.
But also, the other thing that bothered me about the Sanders stuff is, let's get over it. All right. The one thing he cost himself was money, which is something he doesn't need. He had NIL in Colorado. He comes from a very rich family. So it's not like he's in a poverty situation. So the millions of dollars he lost not getting drafted high, who cares? He's been given an opportunity here. He's been drafted in the NFL. If he is indeed that good, Gordon, he will find a way. They will play him. It's a big quarterback room, but I think any of those quarterbacks there, if he's good enough, he can beat out. All right. So, was it Pickett or Flacco? It doesn't matter. He's on a roster. If he's that good, he'll make it work out. So let's see what he can actually do on a team that hasn't had a good quarterback since Bernie Kosar. So let's see if it can work out.
We're talking with Don LaGreca, of course, here on Gordon Damer on Sports. I think the other thing, I love the draft as just a viewer. I love it as entertainment and content, even beyond my team, because the NFL is truly the one national league where you're interested in all the other teams. I thought the one thing about that Sanders story, which showed me and illustrated to me, was that NFL insiders aren't nearly as inside as I think, because I didn't see one single guy nail that pick. Yes, they said, yes, he's dropping. Yeah, he might not make it in the 1st round. But for him to fall all the way to the 5th round, and for none of these insiders to have a single contact with any organization until after the draft telling us, hey, he was off our board, really shows you have to take things with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I don't want to beat up these guys because they all work very hard. And they all they could do is know the players. Watch the game, scout the game, and whenever you see a mock draft, which I think mock drafts are ridiculous, because why would they change? You would like the player, you don't like the player. He doesn't get any better after the combine, yet you see all this movement after the combine. Why would a general manager, outside of the guy who's got the 1st overall pick in the draft, tell you anything? Why would they tell you anything? Why would they tell you the truth, Gordon? Honestly, how does it behoove them to leak information out what they're going to do? It puts them in a very difficult spot. So it's all just uh, educated guesses. I talked to this guy who talked to this guy who talked to that guy who said, I think they're going to go in this direction. We all know what they need. We all knew the Giants needed a quarterback, but that doesn't tell you what quarterback they like, where they're going to take the quarterback. So it's all just guesswork. But you said it. The sport is so national. The sport is so humongous that any little piece of information that's out there, people just hunger for it. And I think it's created a whole cottage industry of BS. It all doesn't mean a damn thing. And that's just what frustrates me about it. But at the same time, really entertains me because it is just an amazing soap opera where the NFL has been able to produce with the draft.
Are the New York Giants now back?
Well, we'll see. But I will tell you this. I think Joe Schoen saved the job. I mean, Joe Schoen's got another year after this on his contract. If you're John Mara, do you think he's done a poor job? I mean, he went out and got the best edge pass rusher you can think of. It was a no-brainer pick at 3. You traded in and got the quarterback that your head coach wanted. You saw their reaction when they drafted Dart. They went nuts. He has done his job. His last year's draft was good. This year's draft is good. People seem to believe that the free agent signings that they had were good. So it seems to me, if I'm John Mara, that he has put together a roster that Dable can go out there and win with, or, look good. I mean, it's going to be tough to win. Their schedule is very difficult. But people have attached Dable and Schoen together. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I could be the owner, John Mara, and say, I think Schoen's done a great job. Now go coach him. And if they go out there and go 3-14, well, then I'm going to fire the coach and bring in another coach. Why do I have to fire the general manager if I think he's done a good job? He did everything you could ask for. He got one of the transcendent players in the draft. He traded back into the first round to get the quarterback his head coach wanted. That's what general managers are supposed to do. He's built a really good defensive line. I think he made the right decision with Thibodeau, giving him the 5th-year option. He's strengthened the defensive backfield, which desperately needed to be done. And I think he did a pretty decent job with the quarterbacks he got. I mean, Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston aren't great quarterbacks, but they're an upgrade from last year. Be more competitive. I think Schoen, over the last 8 months, has saved his job. Now we'll see if Dable can coach these guys and win some games to see if he can save his job.
It does feel very safe right now in May to say it seems all this way when September is still a long way away. And if they win 4 games or 5 games, it really you have to see a jump somehow. And really the only jump you can really see to have real confidence is wins.
I don't 100% agree because they were an absolute embarrassment last year. They were non-competitive, Gordon. I mean, there were some games they were done at the half, and they ended up having the record that they had. You don't think it's possible that they can win a couple of more games, but it just looks better. It looks different. It looks functional. They didn't look like they were functional last year. They didn't look like an NFL franchise. Their schedule is so tough. It's hard to say, go out there and win me 8 games. Now, maybe they will, because I think another thing that's overrated is how good teams can be from year to year. All of a sudden, there's injuries and teams take steps back and they end up being an easier team to play than you thought going in. But right now, taking a look at their schedule, it doesn't look like there's a lot of wins there. So is it possible they can go 5-12 and it just looks a lot better than it did last year? I guess ultimately it's not my decision. It's John Mara's, but don't you think things can look better even though the record maybe is just marginally better?
I feel like it's just safe to say that right now. If you get to the end of next year, we're going to be then going into year 5. If they have won 5 games, do you still feel confident, hey, we're not going to have our coach be a lame duck. We're not going to have our GM be a lame duck. After this upcoming season, you're going to have to make a decision long-term on the future of both when there are not, if that turns out to be the case, not a lot of results in the hard data.
Well, that's why I thought it was a mistake not to give those guys a contract extension. I mean, if you're going to bring them back, extend their contract. Because going into at the end of 26, they're both going to be free agents. Are you going to extend them going into 26, if they're awful, no, you got to probably fire. But I don't know, Gordon, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but you take a look at that schedule. I mean, how many wins do you expect them to get? I think all hiring and firing is did you live up to expectations or not? And if the expectation is you're a 5-win team, then if you go out there and win 6 games, then you've exceeded expectations and maybe you save your job. And then if you end up losing less than you expect, then you end up losing your job. I understand what you're saying. Wins and losses are all but what it's about, but I think sometimes you got to dig a little deeper. What if they win 5 games, but every one of their 12 losses are on the last possession or against really good teams and they score a ton of points, but the defense breaks down or vice versa. I need to see what it looks like. You're probably right, but I think I kind of want to see what it looks like rather than just looking at the record and saying, you won only one more game than you did last year. You're out of a job. I need to see what it looks like.
Speaking of regular coaching changes, do you think Mike Sullivan is the right guy to turn around the Rangers? And is there a coach that can turn around the Rangers, or are the problems deeper than the coach?
You just nailed the biggest dilemma with talking about the Rangers, because I love the Gallant hire. I love the Laviolette hire. And they both ended up only lasting 2 years both times. Mike Sullivan's the no-brainer just because he's won 2 cups. He was an assistant coach under John Tortorella. He's got connections with Drury, so it makes sense. And the money that they gave him, which is the richest contract of any coach, doesn't matter because it doesn't count towards the cap. But you're right. What are they going to do with these players? Because there's so many no-movement clauses. There's so many players that you're just not going to get value for if you decide to trade. There's a very good chance that there'll be very little change to this roster going into next year. So I don't know if these players are going to respond, but I do think Mike Sullivan can at least be a guy that can be a little bit more comfortable than Peter Laviolette was. Peter Laviolette was brought here to win a cup. He was given a 3-year contract to win a Stanley Cup, and that was his window. Goes to the conference final last year, so everything's good. This year, he knows he's in the last year of his contract next year, and now he's got to make decisions just to win games. Sometimes you got to bench players, Gordon. Sometimes you got to give guys healthy scratches. You got to demote them, and looked like Laviolette wasn't willing to do that. There were times he would move Kreider to the 4th line, yet Kreider was still on the number 1 power play. Guys were getting less minutes during regulation, and then you get the overtime, and those guys would be on the ice. Or they'd be down a goal, they pull the goaltender, and it's still Zibanejad and Kreider out on the ice trying to get the equalizer. Like, he didn't seem like all in on really just giving other people a chance, because I think he was trying to save his job. That's not going to be the case here with Sullivan. So hopefully he will make these players a little bit more accountable. The Rangers, Gordon, are like a team. Like, if you won a bunch of championships, it's difficult to let go of the players, and the players kind of have a major say. That's kind of how these Ranger players have been, and they got no rings. Now, they've been somewhat successful. They've gone to a conference final 2 of the last 3 years, but you can't dictate policy when you haven't won. Or, like your Aaron Judge, who basically is a partner in the franchise because of all the money that he makes. Or Juan Soto, you sign him to a 15-year contract, you're probably going to have to run things by him. But those guys being upset about the way the Barclay Goodrow thing went and how the Jacob Trouba thing went, they complained about lack of communication at the end of the season. Since when does a general manager have to communicate things to players? Well, I guess players feel like they're part of an institution that they should have their things run by them. And I just don't think that they were to that level. I don't like players doing that anyway. But at least if you're making a ton of money or you won a bunch of chips, then I can understand you want to be involved. But I don't think those players had a say. And hopefully Mike Sullivan will be able to convey that message to them and try to get the best out of them. But I'm just as curious about it as you are, Gordon, whether it's going to work, because I thought the last 2 coaches were perfect, and it didn't work out that way.
How does Drury get a contract extension when he's picking another? I mean, it feels like every year the Rangers are picking new head coaches.
Well, it's kind of the Giants situation, Gordon, is if you're not firing him, then at least give him a contract extension to show this is my guy. I want him to fix this problem. Now, when he first came here, he let Quinn go. That made sense because that wasn't his guy. He brings in Gallant. Felt like it was the wrong move. He was given another chance to hire Laviolette. I can understand the apprehension, like how many coaches do you get to bring in? But it's a lot of these problems are with the roster. A lot of the issues, like the no movement clauses and the lengths of the contracts and the money these guys are making, were done by the previous regime. So should Chris Drury pay the price for mistakes that were made by the previous general manager and president? I don't think so. So I get the point of why did you give him an extension, but I also get the point that if you're not letting him go, why not double down and say, this is my guy? Show that room, because there's a lot of guys in that room that have a problem for sure. Doesn't that send a message to those players? Well, you have a problem with him. I'm not firing him. Matter of fact, I'm giving him a contract extension. So you guys better get used to it. He's in charge. So I kind of like it from that aspect.
Are the Knicks cooked in the second round against the Celtics?
How are they not? I know you grew up a Knicks fan, but I think you can appreciate my frustration with Knicks fans. They are the most positive of all
for no reason
in New York, for no particular reason. So the word that comes to mind is delusional, right? Like that's again, God love them. Honestly, I know the regular season sometimes doesn't dictate, but you were 0-10 against the three best teams in the NBA. Now, granted, you weren't 100% for all those games. I get it. That Piston team you should have wiped the floor with, and yet you went 6 games, and in 5 of them, you were nail biters right to the end. Meanwhile, Celtics didn't have any problem with the Magic, and certainly Cleveland had zero problem with Miami. And you could say, well, Don, wait a minute. Detroit's really good. They were the top 10 defense, and they had the top 5 defense down the stretch. If Orlando had given Boston trouble, the narrative would be in Boston, well, did you see Orlando was picked to go really far at the beginning of the season? That's a good team. And if Cleveland had trouble with Miami, what would you say? Well, that's Spoelstra. Those Heat, man, they're difficult to kill. And they destroyed those teams, especially Cleveland. The Knicks didn't do that. I know a win's a win, but I was kind of pre-scouting. I wanted to see in that first round, is there a reason for me to believe this team can make hay? I didn't see it. I respect them. I don't think they'll get swept, but I don't think at the end of this series we'll say they had a chance to win.
We don't obviously know how this Celtics series will play out, but try to predict ahead of time. What do you think the changes will be if the Knicks are basically non-competitive and lose in 5 games?
Well, there are going to be people that are going to want Tibbs gone, but talking to Allen, who's pretty connected with the Knicks, that doesn't seem like it's on the table. Although I think it should be a conversation, right? I mean, Thibodeau is kind of like, Marty Schottenheimer of the NBA. Like, he's a good coach, but he'll get you to the playoffs. But is he good enough to get you to a championship? But it doesn't look like that'll change. I think they've got to just bite the bullet on the 5 first-round picks and do something with Bridges. I think that's probably the biggest disappointment, right? I mean, you thought he was going to be a much better offensive player. That has not been the case. There's actually a conversation that maybe DiVincenzo can be somebody that could be brought back, add a little bit more heart, a little bit more bite, a little bit more leadership to this team. But other than that, unless you're willing to part with Towns, I don't see a Giannis coming here. Now, if you're going to bring Giannis here, Gordon, and that's obviously going to be something that people are going to be talking about, I think everybody but Brunson has to be on the table, right? So now you're reimagining, and the Garden loves this word, reimagining a team for the second consecutive year, right? Now, KD, can you get KD without giving up Towns? Do you want KD at that age? But those are probably the only things that I can see happening, Gordon, that'll be a needle mover. Bringing in a Giannis, bringing in a KD, or maybe just finding a way to exit out of Bridges, bringing DiVincenzo back, which I think would be kind of a minor move, although it can move the needle. Other than Giannis or KD, what else could they do?
It really is a question of whether or not you feel like the team that is built is good enough to win a championship. And if you're removing the GM and the coach from the equation of any changes, it really only leaves you one direction, which is the actual talent on the roster.
Yeah. Giannis, I know, wants to come here, but you're going to gut your team to bring him in. He's making a ton of money. You got to make the finances work. And are you in agreement that other than Brunson, everybody would have to be on the table for a Giannis?
Yeah. I don't know what they have in terms of resources still to be dealt. They traded the 5 picks for him. Yeah. It doesn't seem like they have a lot of maneuverability.
No, but I don't know what other teams would be in there. Giannis wants to be a Knick, but you got to be able to make it work. As you said, they don't have the pick, so it'd probably be something off the roster. I don't know if Milwaukee sees anything. Would they want a Towns? Would they want an Anunoby? Does all that work for them? I don't know. But and then the KD might be a little bit easier. Again, he's much older, so that would be kind of a quick fix. But does Boston look like they're going anywhere? Does Cleveland look like they're going anywhere? So do you want to bring in a KD and knowing that maybe you only have 1 or 2 years to try to go after it? I mean, Boston's not an old team by any stretch. I don't know how Cleveland's doing it, but that was the wrench in the whole thing, Gordon. Like when they made that deal last year, it was, okay, now let's go to the conference final. assuming that it would be Boston and New York in the conference final. But Cleveland kind of threw a wrench in that. So now Boston's taking on New York in the second round. And now everybody's like, well, no, it's still third round or bust. But you didn't think Boston was going to be there in the second round. So I think that's why Knicks fans are all excited about beating Boston, because they're just looking at, I want to get to the conference final. And also they believe they would have beat Boston last year, which I'm not necessarily sure was the case anyway. But those are the types of things that'll be on the table if they were to lose to Boston. And I think they're going to.
Are you freaking out about Juan Soto's slow start?
You know what I'm freaking out about is why everybody's telling me I'm supposed to freak out about it. Because I think I'm being trolled by Yankee fans who are like, oh, you can see he wants to be a Yankee. He regrets being a Met. My whole life, all I care about is winning. They're in first place. They're off to one of the best starts in franchise history. So why wouldn't I look at it and go, eventually this guy's going to hit. So imagine how good this team's going to be once he starts hitting. Now, I'm sure guys like Lindor and Alonso are going to slow down, but believe me, I think he's going to carry this team at some point during the course of the year because he's just too good. But what freaks me out is how I constantly get told by Alan, who's a Yankee fan, or Yankee callers, like, oh, what's the matter with Juan Soto? What do I care? If he hits 250 and hits 16 home runs and they win the World Series, am I going to care? Gordon, you're a big Yankee fan. Do you remember what everybody hit? I remember we worked together in 96. You were thrilled when the Yankees won the World Series in 96. Can you tell me right now what Derek Jeter's batting average was in 96 or what any player did? No, you only cared about the fact they won a championship.
And the fact that Juan Soto is struggling in his first year with a new team, I almost take it as a good sign that the Mets are winning and Juan Soto has not been the major part of it or the main reason why they're doing so. Because Juan Soto has a fairly significant track record at this point, yes, that it's going to show up at some point, and it might show up when the Mets really need it later in the season.
But let's look at each individual criticism. He succumbed to the pressure. Well, he played in the World Series at 18. There wasn't pressure going to the Yankees last year where everybody was going to look at that trade as a failure if they didn't win the World Series. And what did he do? He had a great year, goes all the way to the World Series, and he certainly wasn't the reason that they lost to the Dodgers. I don't think it's the pressure. I think it's, the adjustment of going to a different team. He's pitched different because he doesn't have a judge protecting him. He shouldn't have said that a couple of weeks ago, Gordon, but he wasn't wrong. He'll be fine. He's just too good. He was never a great defender, so I don't, but for him to have an awful season and Gordon, guess what? If he does, he's got another 14 years left on the contract. That's the other thing that frustrates me is like, oh, you got to win the World Series this year. Well, why do they have to win this year? He signed a 15-year contract. Even if he were to opt out, which he won't, I still have like 7 years of Juan Soto to win me championships. It's like it's the same thing with Alex Rodriguez. Well, they haven't won a World Series. Well, it took till 2009, but at least you got one. I don't put all my eggs in this basket. And the other thing too, this is a really difficult National League, man. The Padres are great. The Dodgers are great. The Phillies are going to certainly be heard from. The Giants are off to a tremendous start. I'm still a believer that last year you can make the case the Yankees were the fifth best team in Major League Baseball last year, but the record says they were the second best because they went to the World Series. That's the other thing too, is the Yankees might not be as good as the Mets, but the Yankees, I think, it'll be a disappointment if they go to the World Series. The American League stinks. The Mets could be a better team and not go. So there's all those things in play. I think people are trying to create a Mets versus Yankees thing. I just want to see my team win the division. I want to see my team go far in the playoffs, and I only worry about the Yankees when they play during the interleague play and if they were to meet in the World Series.
All right, we got a couple of minutes left. Movies is always a topic we go back and forth about.
Yeah.
Anything that you have seen in I would say the last calendar year that has really jumped out to you?
You know what? You're going to get ready for this. I was blown away by the Minecraft movie.
Really?
I went to see it. It came out, comes out on a Friday. I saw it on a Saturday. So Nancy's like, they got to see the Minecraft movie. The kids play the video game. They love it. And I roll my eyes. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. But what are you going to do? Be with the family. I was blown away. And now it's become like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. They're throwing popcorn in certain scenes and stuff. But for a kids movie, I really thought it was hilarious. I laughed out loud a bunch of times. That was a movie that really and truly blew me away.
That should be on the movie poster the next time I go to the theater. I have not been to the theater in a very long time, but that Don LaGreca's review of the Minecraft movie, that should be the blurb at the top.
Right. I think it's I think it's terrific. But I'm like you. The only time I go to the theater now is for the kids stuff. So that's really all that I unfortunately have on my resume over the last couple of years, for sure.
Final question, and this is probably the most important question. Have you gone back and watched from start to finish The Irishman?
I have not. Not because I don't want to, I haven't had the time. I like that movie. I know we've had our argument. We could have done the whole podcast on this. I liked it. I thought it was really good.
But you've not gone back. You and I both agree that the strength of a movie is how much you rewatch it. And especially if it's a good movie, you learn, you pick up different things on the rewatches that maybe you didn't catch the first time. You've not gone back and rewatched it. Is that not a sign that maybe you misjudged it originally?
I like a lot of, I can't speak for everyone, but the rewatchability of a movie or the opportunity to do it usually just comes from it being on the premium channels, and I'm flipping around and then watch it. I don't see it on that often.
Why do you think that is? You think that might be a sign of something?
It might be, but you know what? I don't see it on as much. Like Goodfellas is always on.
Always.
And so, yeah, that sucks me back in. You know, we haven't had this conversation. I don't mean to hold you up. You know what's really grown on me to the point where I might be ready to say it's right there among his best movies is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Absolutely agree.
That might end up aging to be his best picture. Now, it's not there yet because, again, Reservoir Dogs, unbelievable. Pulp Fiction, unbelievable. Those are the two, I think, best of his. That no matter when it's on, I get sucked in, I watch it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood hasn't been out long enough for me to know if it's going to have that kind of rewatchability that those two have, because those two movies have 20-year head starts, 30-year head starts. But I could see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood end up being his best work. It's a tremendous story. It was a tremendous idea to relive an event in history and change it. I think the performances were unbelievable. I think it's underrated funny. It might end up being his best work. Is that an exaggeration?
I don't think so. I would say of the last, I don't know when that movie came out because all time has kind of stood still since the pandemic. But in the last 10 years, in the last 10 years, that might be my most rewatched movie, because a great rewatchable movie is rewatchable just for individual scenes. And individual scenes are almost like their own movie. And that movie definitely has that dynamic. Now, all of his movies kind of have that dynamic, but that movie specifically has that dynamic.
I think it's I didn't get a chance to talk to you about that. My brother's a big Tarantino fan, and I asked him to watch it, and he came back with the same, like, oh, this is unbelievable. Like what happened? I think the pandemic kind of, I don't want to say messed that movie up. Like, I don't know. It just didn't seem like it got the play that it really should have. Yeah, when did it come out? 18, 19? So it was like right there. I remember, and maybe people watched it during the pandemic, but just not talked about as much as I think it should have been. But I always wanted to ask you about that because I didn't think, I thought maybe you would agree with me. So I'm really happy that you do.
Marketing for a sports team? Can't quite think of a way to engage loyal fans as much as you would like? This is where a .vote web address comes in. Allow for fans to help decide player of the game, player of the week, or MVP of a season. There are hundreds of ways you can conduct polls for fan engagement that benefits both the organization and the fan base. Visit www.godaddy.com and purchase www.yourteam.vote.
All right, time now for 3 and Out. First things first, it's game 1 tonight, Knicks and Celtics. They open their series in Boston, and I can tell you right now, nobody anywhere believes the Knicks can win this series. Not really. Not even Knicks fans deep down, because the Knicks are not going to win this series. It was a grind just to get to this series. Knicks were fortunate they only needed 6 games to beat the Pistons. Celtics are the best team in the East. They're better than even the Cavaliers, who have the best record. The Cavs are paper tigers until they can prove they're as good as their regular season records. The Celtics are the NBA champ and the team that the Knicks have been targeting since last offseason. It's the reason they made the moves they did. Now they get the chance to see how those moves turned out, and I'm guessing it's not going to be good. I'd be surprised if this series goes more than 5 games. The Knicks are going to have their lights turned out. They do not match up well with Boston at all. They lost all 4 regular season matchups. And while that's not the biggest deal in the world, it's not exactly like the Knicks have flipped the switch in the playoffs. Knicks have 2 games to win 1. They have to win one of the first 2 games in Boston to make this series even remotely interesting. Teams down 0-2 don't win NBA playoff series, especially when the other team is the defending champs. The good news is the Knicks have absolutely no pressure of expectations because, again, nobody anywhere thinks they can win this series, so the pressure's off. Go steal a game, hopefully game 1, but if not, game 2. Otherwise, this series is going to be over quick. Number 2 on the list, the Bucks should not wait for Giannis to request a trade. They should be lining up the phone calls already. The Bucks had an amazing run. 5 years ago, they won an NBA title. Since then, they lost in the conference finals and now have lost in the first round 3 straight years. The run is done. The team is old. Dame Lillard's not going to play next year. Giannis is 30. He's not getting any younger. And the Bucks don't own their own draft pick again until 2031. Reports are the Bucks are not going to trade him unless he asks for it. They'll never win another title with him, so it's better to be proactive and get on with the rebuild. They can try to deny reality and sink more resources into a sinking ship, but they're better off diving in with both feet to the rebuild rather than trying to retool something that's not going anywhere. And finally, it happened a few days ago, but still sad news. The Angels' Mike Trout back on the injured list, a bone bruise in his knee. It is truly sad that this guy just cannot stay healthy. He is a Hall of Fame player, one of the great players of his generation, and it's hard not to wonder what could have been if he could just stay healthy, but that has not been the case. He's played 100 games in a season once since 2019. Just brutal. He was off to a rough start this season. It seems like the skills have eroded, and if they've not, we're never going to be able to find out because he just cannot stay healthy long enough to get going into a season. And even worse for the Angels, he still has 5 years and almost $200 million owed to him on his contract. Rough. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Please, if you've made it this far, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. It really does help. Your phone is in your hand right now. You can just reach out and touch it. I believe in you. We'll be back later this week with another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports.